Hi, welcome to the podcast, The Open-Minded. So, we're currently experiencing some dark times in America. And that's got us thinking about different times in history where, let's say, races or events that America has experienced. And, well, it's not taught in school, or they tend not to promote it as much because, I don't know, they just say they try hiding it, or whatever reasons they have to not show it or promote it in school or outside of it. I know Alex wants to talk about African American history.
Yeah, so a big issue is that if, for example, you guys would try to recall when in school, do you guys ever recall learning about how African Americans were introduced into America? Or have you guys learned about the Tuskegee syphilis experiment? It seems to be that a lot of African American history is handpicked and included in textbooks and history books, and it's not really taught. And well, I personally had to learn from taking an African American history course in college, and I mean that's when I began to learn about the lynching and different lynching stories, and learning about African American leaders like Booker T. Washington, Carmichael, groups like the Black Panther. It's a lot. So, but like it's just very few things that's actually taught in school. And like for example, the first ever female proclaimed millionaire was African American. Her name was C.J. Walker, and she became a millionaire from selling hair products like gel and like hair wash, stuff like that. And yeah, she became a millionaire, and she basically she was a big she was a very influential leader to basically the females, because yeah, she was the first ever millionaire, and she like most of the people she hired, I think everyone she hired were females. So yeah, she helped them out a lot, and she was basically in those times when the opportunities were limited to African Americans, she became a millionaire. And yeah, like it's like for example the Tuskegee syphilis experiment, where I think it was 600 African Americans. They basically, an experiment was conducted in Tuskegee, Alabama, and basically 600 people from that community who were of low socioeconomic status. They conducted an experiment on them with syphilis. They were testing penicillin to see if penicillin was effective against syphilis. But there's many issues with this, because they told them that they were gonna offer them medical care, medical treatment. So yeah, since these people live in poverty, they didn't have money to pay for medical treatment or checkups in the doctor. So yeah, many people ended up becoming infected with syphilis. And I mean, it's obvious, knowing that in those times the treatment of medical tools there obviously wasn't much sanitation, so it wasn't really taken seriously. And there was another issue with how they conduct studies. If there's informed consent or shared consent, where the person knows what he's receiving, or what treatments she's receiving, or what are the effects, the side effects. So, and like, and another issue was that when the people wanted to get treatment from the doctors, the experimenters, they got in contact with the doctors and they prevented the people, the African Americans, from receiving treatment. So they were basically left to die, and I mean they couldn't receive treatment on the syphilis because they were saying it was going against the codes of conduct of the experiment.
Yeah, so basically what you're saying is that they weren't informed at all what they were being injected, or just what treatment they were taking in order to cure the syphilis. Because I'm pretty sure they might have injected them with syphilis too, so at least they could have it too. Because at least back then, there was no way to actually track it, and they could cover their trail too. So yeah.
No, and another issue that I think it was many people that became resistant to penicillin, and penicillin wasn't actually a very effective antibiotic against the syphilis. I think I don't remember exactly, but there was another medicine that was introduced, and well, that was what ended up being a good treatment for syphilis. But yeah, penicillin wasn't it wasn't the cure. And the thing is that all these people were informed that, oh, like, since you have syphilis, if you become part of this experiment, you're gonna be cured from syphilis. And yeah, like, the thing is that most likely the needles, all the same needles and the tools were used without sanitation.
So basically they would contract other things. Like, let's say if somebody had syphilis and another person had like another contagious disease, like let's say HIV or AIDS or something, it's gonna spread rapidly like that.
Yeah. And well, yeah, the issue is that most of these people, since they live in poverty, they don't have the right amount of education, so,
or they're not informed too.
And like they don't they weren't informed of like what type of treatments they were receiving. And like another issue was that this experiment, it was conducted sort of last minute because they had a very low budget and they wanted to conduct an experiment. Then they ended up conducting this experiment, and it was conducted on a
massive scale.
Yeah, and it was on on people with a low socioeconomic status.
Because at least to them, they're like, at least how they might see it is as, if this experiment doesn't go through well, who is gonna care about these people? They haven't done anything, or they're not as significant. Like, they're not as important to this country as, let's say, a millionaire, or a person that owns land. And then, like, I'm pretty sure too, like, they're being racist too, where they're like, oh, I don't know, this, at least this race is doesn't mean anything. I'm like, I can do whatever I want with it because I'm white, or whatever it is.
That was a racial bias because it was conducted on African Americans and a community that's predominantly African American. So, and yeah, like the people, they had to go to a farther city just in order to receive treatment. But once getting to the doctor or the hospital, they weren't allowed. They didn't receive treatment, or the doctor didn't treat them because, for the reason that the people conducting this experiment got in contact with the doctors, and they prevented the treatment from happening because in their, I mean, they when in their case it was the people, the African Americans disrespecting the code of conduct. So yeah, and like
so they use different things to let's say like different things that would help them not treat them too.
Yeah.
So like let's say like they just give them like a little bit of like this treatment just to make them feel better. So then they would try to pursue it and like let's say look for that treatment more because yeah, of course you feel better because I don't know what exactly syphilis does, but yeah, like let's say it treats like certain pain or whatever it is. Of course they're gonna go look for it because it works, but yeah, like they're finding out different like loopholes to try like at least to not like give them that treatment.
Mm-hmm. Well, because obviously if the government found out, the people they're most likely, or like who knows, knowing in the time it occurred, they might have experienced they've gone through trials. So, and also the organization could have been shut down, and the whole experiment would have gotten shut down too. So
yeah, it's yeah, so
it's like, and like also like for example, Germany, they educate people on all the genocides that occurred during the Nazi era. Like I've seen documentaries where there's some streets and like signs around Germany where they for example, if it's like outside an apartment, there's a sign that says there's this like a Jew family that was killed, and it has everyone has their names on the sign. So, and yeah, the thing is that if we look at it, there's probably not many African. I don't know how many African American museums are there.
Oh yeah,
there's probably very few, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, like that's like it's a big part of America. So, like it's not really taught. And I remember during African American history, there was this case where there's this woman where she was pregnant, and I think her husband was either brutally beaten or killed, and she was threatening to report them to the police. And what they ended up doing is they ended up kidnapping her, and they took her to the woods, and she was pregnant, so they basically opened up her stomach and they pulled out her baby, and they
left her to die.
Yeah, they stepped on her baby. They basically squashed her kid, and they ended up lighting her on fire. So like, and the thing is that, I mean, yeah, like it's graphic, but I mean at the same time, like we're not learning exactly what happened, like how these issues came to be in America, and we're not really educated on this. So
yeah, and then like if you see, I never knew about like that shooting or wherever it was. I forgot exactly where it was or the name of it, but basically they use that as like, let's say, the plot of the Watchmen TV show in HBO, where
Tulsa Massacre.
Yeah, the Tulsa Massacre, where basically a bunch of people just gathered up, and they just went into the city and just started killing all the African Americans that were there, only because, I don't know, they wanted to. And if you see, I had never learned that in school. I'm pretty sure they didn't teach it in school too, to you guys, right? And then if you see, we had to learn it from a TV show too.
Yeah, also that I never knew about the Tuskegee experiment until like Alex showed me the documentary, and then also they don't really tell us about like all the lynchings that happening.
Yeah, like we know that there's like segregation or
brutality
brutality and all that stuff,
like,
but they never teach us like, let's say, big events during that too.
it's like if you think about it, just like, well, one of the things I remember is just MLK, Jim Crow, the black codes, Jim Crow laws, but yeah, it's like, for example, how African Americans were introduced into America. Basically, it was this. I think it was Americans that they were selling, and well, there was a Portuguese people on a boat, and I guess they ended up sailing nearby America or close to America, and they needed supplies because they were sick and they were low on food. So they ended up crossing paths with Americans, and they broke a deal of trading African Americans, Africans for food and medicine, and that was later on used to build a Virginia company, and it was a big part in harvesting the tobacco, because they offered employment to Americans, but they didn't really want deployment. It was too much for them, so they ended up using these slaves in order to harvest and plant the tobacco.
Yeah, because like all those British colonists that came, they had to, the people who owned the plantations, they had to pay all of them. So it was much cheaper.
Just getting,
that's why they did it.
Like free labor.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the thing is that the labor from Americans, it wasn't as efficient, and it wasn't as fast. And yeah, they wanted more and more money, and yeah, the product wouldn't come out as good as they wanted. So yeah, and the thing is that like that was how Virginia was constructed. It was a big part of the construction of Virginia. So
basically like all those like southeast
and
countries, states, they're the ones that had like most of the tobacco plantations and stuff.
And I think that's how Virginia was colonized, right? Because I think they also offered Americans. They offered them house. They offered them a couple of acres to build their house and bring their family over. So, but like not many people liked it because there wasn't much to do, because they were barely building on top of Virginia, so there wasn't much.
And if it wasn't for the slaves that were used, Virginia probably would have never been able to be completely established, because that was like their only source of income. Like the water in the area was like pretty nasty. They didn't have like a lot of natural resources, and it was, I think, the Indians that introduced them, the Native Americans that introduced them to like tobacco. Then
it's like
it wasn't for like all those tobacco plantations. So.
It's like if we think about the Civil War, the main issue was that slavery was going to be abolished. So and like slaves, it was a big there was a lot of money involved in slaves. It was big financial support, because you didn't have to pay. I think they paid them with corn, right? I've heard that some African Americans, they paid them with corn, or they just paid them a very few amount of money. Like it wasn't. Yeah, it's like didn't have to pay how much at all, or didn't have to pay them. And the thing is that also like it was how America was constructed in a way, because they didn't have to pay for all the harvesting of cotton and corn and other crops.
Yeah, so basically, it just gave them, like, let's say, free housing and food in order to just live there.
Yeah,
and
wasn't really housing either, because like
no.
all those slaves were like bunched up in like a small like little shack.
No, but like at least to, let's say, like the master or the slave master or whatever it's called, they saw it that way. They're like, I'm giving you food, I'm giving you a place to live. Yeah, it's shitty, but it's what you get.
And like that's an issue why, for example, you're seeing right now how people are saying that police are racist, and it's like, if we go back in time, police were basically used to arrest African American slaves that escaped.
Mm-hmm.
And for example, in the times of MLK, when the bus drivers, they were able to carry firearms. Mm-hmm. If an African American didn't want to go to the back of the bus, or if they didn't want to exit the bus.
Yeah, so basically they've always been getting attacked, like, in different ways
throughout history.
Yeah, throughout history. Like, now, of course, yeah, like what happened with George Floyd. It's probably like all the people have had enough already. They're tired of all the injustice, because they tried changing. They tried let's say, like, integrating into American society in other ways.
It's like, but we also look back into the Reconstruction era. It was, well, it's called Reconstruction because, after, I think it was after the Civil Rights Act, basically African Americans wanted to readapt. They wanted to plant their feet in America and work and provide for their family, but at the same time there was many loopholes around the political system that prevented them from doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, it was like, if you think about it, the Constitution, it said all men are made free, right?
Yeah.
And it doesn't really specify restrictions depending on race. So, and the thing is that after the Reconstruction era, they didn't have many possibilities to prosper. And
then and then if you see, they're always getting, like, let's say they're always getting, like, the shedding of the stick, right? And so they're always getting, like, the shedding of the stick, and a lot of things is influenced by their culture too. It's like, what's pretty much like the biggest music now? Rap. I was like, who doesn't want to become a rapper? Who doesn't want to become a rapper? Like, if you see the clothes, the shoes, and also influenced by them too. Like, if you see Nike gets a bunch of, like, basketball players and get them to make their own color wave, or if not, they get different rappers too. Like, you see all the exclusive shoes that they have. I don't know, like, Pharrell Williams, that singer, I think he raps and he sings. I'm not sure what exactly he sings, but he has his own shoes, and they're pretty expensive, aren't they, if I remember well?
Yeah.
And let's say like the culture now is influenced by them.
And then also like
But and then yet we still attack them.
and most of like the top athletes from a lot of like American sports are like black people.
Mm-hmm. Like, I don't know, probably genetically wise, they're way better at sports, or they're just more athletic than, like, let's say the average American, Mexican, or other races. And yeah, like if you see, like, a lot of teams are, yeah, a lot of teams, they win, or they're that, because yeah, they influence everything.
It's like also, I don't know if you heard about the song "Strange Fruit" by Billie Holiday. It was a song that described lynching, because yeah, like as I was saying, like in school, we're not really taught about lynching, and she basically in her song describes how African Americans, like well, in a way, in the song it's called "Strange Fruit," and at the same time, well, like the strange fruit, in my opinion, basically symbolizes African Americans, how people have singled them out, they have desocialized with them, just for based on their color. So she basically describes how there's blood on the leaves, which basically they're hanged from the tree, and there's under the tree there's going to be leaves, and there's blood on the leaves, and she basically describes how they're hanged and their head basically is twisted to the side, and their tongue sticking out and their eyes protruding, which it describes the horror of lynching, how many people were hanged, because nothing was done to punish the people who were partaking in lynching.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a song that politics try to erase. They try to do something in order to prevent it from coming out, in order to basically take it out of media, because it was very graphic and it made America look very bad. And also Kanye, he mentioned on one of his songs the line where she says blood on the leaves, and yeah, it was
because, like, well, at least if you see a fruit tends to be sweet, right? Yeah, like a fruit tends to be sweet, but yeah, like she says, strange fruit. The name is Strange Fruit, so like it's something sweet that you get, and it might not taste good because, like, all the hardship or it took in order to actually grow that fruit. So yeah, like pretty much they're trying to achieve a goal, but it's like strange and not, like, let's say known to them, I think, in a way. Can't really put it all too well, but
also, like, there's this line that there's two really good lines from the song. One of them says strange fruit hanging from the popular trees. They're popular trees because it was common for them to hang African Americans in magnolia trees, and popular because a lot of people would do gatherings. I remember also I learned that there was people that would rent out theaters, and they would conduct lynching there in the theater. And if we see a theater now, it's in a public area, right? So, like, for example, the Harkins Theater in Chino, there's a bunch of shops around, and people people would rent that out, and
so we'll just gather there just to see like a new
lynching.
event, or
it was like
not, go out and eat, and then go and see the lynching. But then it was the same thing with in Europe, the whole when they would use the guillotine in order to cut people. It was an event. People will go there and see it too, because it's something entertaining to them.
It was an event, but the difference is that you have innocent people that were killed or brutally beaten, and like one of the most strangest aspects of the lynching, and also like very horrific, is that people would basically take body parts. So I remember I read this article from African American history where there's this man who described that, walking by a store, and the store owner had, I think, the teeth, like the jaw of the person. He had it on his window, like on the window where like they put like, for example, a table. Like if it's a pawn shop, they're probably putting a nice looking table, and they have the person's jaw right there. So it was, in a way, like, for example, we see like trophy hunting, like people going hunting, like the people that hang those heads, the heads of the animals.
Mm-hmm.
It was basically like,
it's like
similar
a trophy,
to here.
or like I don't know, not a
it's called
a memento.
I think it's called trophy hunting. And but yeah, like for example, if an African American was killed and they chopped off his hand, the guy probably had his hand right there in public.
Basically, I'm like, I was there as a witness to see this, and I'm proud of it. I want everybody to know that I'm a racist or whatever it is.
And it's like also I don't remember exactly. Can you search it up? I'm basically say what it is, and you're gonna search it up. It's basically like, I remember also there's a story where a group of African Americans, they were locked up because a bunch of people wanted to kill them, because apparently it was this, I think, a group of 4 young African American males. They were accused of raping a woman. I think it was inside a train. And they basically followed them, and they were literally like, I think it was, they had them on the floor and they were about to kill them, but like luckily the police arrived and they locked them up in a way, like, for their own safety. And there's like people made a big protest, and they protested as Scottsboro boys. So it was 9. So it was 9 teenagers, and I think it was two white American females. They accused them of rape, and like they had to lock them up because they were gonna get killed. And like that was a very common issue where American women, they would falsely accuse African Americans. So if for example someone stole a bag, like a purse, from a woman, and it was American, she would automatically blame it on an African American, and a big mob of people would take justice into their own hands, and they would attack them. So they would attack them, or they would kill them. And I think after a while they ended up, I guess it was someone else that actually raped her or something, and they were, I think they ended up getting released, but they were about to get killed for no reason. And it was very common. For some reason, they would just automatically be blamed and labeled as a criminal. So
because of course they don't value them as, let's say, only because like only because they're different color. But I think this like sort of stems from like religion too. Like if you see always like if you see like in books in like the Bible and all that stuff, they say that like yeah, like if something is discolored or it's dark and all that stuff, it's dirty. And like if you see, in order for something to be pure, it has to be white, right? White, right? So if something is white, like if you see like in baptism, whenever they baptize little kids, you have to dress them in white because that's pure. It's clean.
But I mean, the thing is that this was more like a social and
No, I know,
political
but like
construct.
pretty much throughout history, I think that's like sort of influenced us too in a way. Because like yeah, like at least like if let's say if I was white, I'm like I'm like oh I am like I am better than you, or like even in religion, I'm like white is always pure, white is always better. So I would see my race as, let's say, like something like magical or powerful. Then like let's say if I see like an African American or an Indian or a Mexican or whatever it is, they are not the color white, so they're not pure.
And also, back then, a lot of people used Darwinism to supposedly explain that since the supposedly white people, or I think it's called the the Aryan race, are supposedly like the dominant race, and
Yeah,
they're
because
basically
we
destined to
evolved,
survive.
like,
Since
Mhm.
there's like the idea of survival of the fittest, and supposedly like the Aryan race was the fittest, and they used that to make people think that people of color were like inferior to them.
Yeah, because like at least let's say we evolved from them, and since we evolved from them and we're different, that makes us way better. Because let's say we're like the next generation. We're the Mach 2 or whatever it is. We are the better generation than them. So like at least they would see that and actually like well you're primitive. Yeah, I don't value you as much. So of course like I would take advantage of it because I am way better than you.
And then a lot of like people would like release like fake studies supposedly like showing that like it was like released during like before World War II, during like the Holocaust. They would like release false studies that supposedly like they'll show like Hispanics and Jewish people and black people, and supposedly they're more related to apes, but we're basically like the same race. Like
Mm-hmm.
every human is the same. Not one is like more related to apes and stuff.
Yeah, it's like if you see, it's pretty much the same thing with like certain animals, right? You could get an animal and you can move it somewhere else. It'll start looking different, but it's still the same thing.
Yeah.
It's still the same species. It's just that now it changed to like its environment into like to suit its environment. Because like at least it was used to being like let's say in a hot area, or let's say like the fox, right? There's this fox that during the summer it's colorful. It's I don't know, it's brown or red or whatever it is, and then once it turns into winter, it starts getting old. Like its hair starts turning white because yeah, it has to camouflage to it, and only because they say that fox is white, I'm gonna think it's more pure or it's way better than it. No, it's just that we acclimated to a certain environment. It's like if you see like yeah, like Europeans or the Aryan race, they were up north, so they were much higher up north, and they didn't really get that much sunlight and all stuff. So like let's say they didn't really need that pigmentation, or I forgot what's it called, the thing that gives color in your skin.
Melanin.
Yeah, like like the pigment. We needed less of it, like in order to deal with the sun. So yeah, of course they started changing, and their features started getting different also, because of course they had to acclimate to their environment. But yeah, it's just we're the same thing. It's just that we changed because we moved to a different environment.
And it's like also, I mean, ABC, like for example, when there's an issue happening with the DACA, they're Mexicans and other people, they're protesting outside the Supreme Court. And if you see the way MLK would protest, he would protest to put a lot of pressure on the political leaders, using passive protests, and also protesting outside of very important places which where political leaders worked. So, and like also for example, there's this letter, the letter from the Birmingham jail, where he wrote the letter to eight clergymen, and those clergymen were basically leaders in their religion, people from all sorts of religions, and their issue with him coming to Birmingham, they called them outsiders and extremists, because they were protesting. And she was saying, like, I'm not an outsider because I have my own legal deals over here. I have my own organization over here. I'm a leader of an organization which is based off of Birmingham. And they were basically protesting against them coming, and they were saying that they're basically causing disasters. But at the same time, he had connections to Alabama, and he basically described to the religious leaders how it's not justifiable that the way they're treating African Americans, and how they're segregating them and preventing them from having the same rights as a normal white American would have. And he basically described that he used a story where it was apparent, it was him, I think. He was saying that his daughter has always asked him, when will she ever be able to ride on a roller coaster? Like, I'm seeing this roller coaster being promoted on television. Like, why don't we ever go and ride on the roller coaster? And he was basically describing how, like, I mean, if you do that, you're gonna get singled out, or you're not gonna be able to ride the roller coaster. So yeah, he basically described and many reasons why this protest should happen, and what it actually means to his community. So
and I think this concludes our episode. Thank you for watching, and bye.